Hindi ko nga ikaalam anak kung matatapos to. Napakatagal na malapit na akong mamatay Hindi pa natatapos. Pero alam mo ikang ganon, palagay ko matatapos din. Ko bakit? What is your reason? Abay sabi niya, doon sa Iran ay merong isang tunay na siya natapos. Ito nga atin, nasyahan lamang. And I feel, my friends, as the Tagalog would say, kay haba-haba ng prosesyon sa simbahan din ang tuloy, this will also end. I have often asked myself, when I was in prison for 7 years and 7 months, you will note that one of the greatest problems of a prisoner is loneliness. For 7 years, I was not allowed to see the moon and the stars. There were days where they left me all alone by myself. I had no reading material. I had nothing. I was twiddling my thumb. I would walk and walk and walk across my room. Just a room of about 4 meters by 5 meters. Hoping that I'll get tired. And then when I get tired, I will fall asleep. Knowing that tomorrow will be the same. And I often ask myself, bakit ka pa nagpapakahirap dito? In 73, a high official of the government asked me, endorse mo na lamang ang New Society, Ninoy, ayos na. Ilalabas na kita. When I refused, they advised me, sumulat ka na lang kay Marcos, ask for his forgiveness. Wala na naman kakong kasalanan ko, siya nagkasala sa bayan, bakit akong hihingi ng tawad? My friends, I cannot understand the temerity and the gall of these people. Kang ganon, be practical. Talagang ganon makibagay ka na napakalakas ka ng bagyo Ikaw lang ka mahihirapan diyan. Mag-isa ka dyan. Hindi balik kang ganon. Kung ayaw mo nang sumulat, tumawag ka na lang sa telepono, ibulong mo na lamang, ayos na. I would like to tell you that I was tempted in my almost 7,285 days in prison to do just that. I am only human. Ako po isang tao lamang. When my wife and children would visit me and they would leave me at dusk after 1 hour, I also would like to enjoy the embrace of my children and the peace of my home. But if I gave faith in that conviction, if I refused to accept the jurisdiction of a military court, and because I refuse to defend myself, they will give me the death sentence, I vowed to myself that because you have elected me to the Senate and I gloried in its pomp, therefore it is now time that I must suffer the consequences of my act. And because I knew early on, and I discovered that there is a God who is just, na merong isang Panginoon na ibibigay sa atin ang ating kagandahang ginawa at paparusahin tayo sa ating kamaliang nagawa rin. It is because of that faith in my divine Creator that sustained me all these years. All I had to do was call for a telephone that was outside my room. All I had to do was pick it up and tell Mr. Marcos, Brad, tapos na, ayos na, I'm throwing the towel. Killers in the Philippines were freed. The people who were used to testify against me told the court, I killed 50 people. And yet that man was free. He described to the people and he described to the military tribunal how he killed human beings. And yet that man was free. And I was in jail. Many witnesses were paraded before me. I never saw them in my life. And yet they were pointing fingers at me, accusing me of crimes I never committed. They admitted to crimes. They said they were communists. They said they were number 3 in the communist hierarchy. And yet the government set them free, and I was in jail. But I knew that somehow, I will regain my freedom. Maybe not in this world, but elsewhere. And I knew that sometime, somewhere, Mr. Marcos and I will meet. And in that meeting, I will have my satisfaction. Dear friends, last January 17, Mr. Marcos told the world, martial law has been lifted in the Philippines. It was a very good news. I mean, if you're only reading the headlines, you would say, this is the greatest thing that happened. After 8 years, martial law is lifted. Freedom should be returned by now. And the Filipino people should be out in the street. Like BJ Day, like BE Day, they should be dancing in the street. They'd be shouting hallelujah. And the bell should be ringing Te Deum. But the announcement of Mr. Marcos was met with stony silence. Why? Because it was only a cruel deception. Because 3 days before martial law was lifted, allegedly in the Philippines, Mr. Marcos signed into a law. Presidential Decree number 1737. I did not know about this law until Senator Tañada came to me in Boston and gave me this law. And when I saw the number, I was stunned and I had cold chills in my back. It was Presidential Decree number 1737, and this is exactly the address of my office in Harvard, 1737 Cambridge Street. Ako po ininervyos. Hayop ako sa dami ng numerong kombinasyon, ito pang tinamaan na sweepstake. Hindi ko man nalaman kung isinadya ito sa Maynila, ngunit ito po hindi nagpatulog sa akin ng 1 linggo. Sapagkat this presidential decree says, an act providing for the preservation of public order and the protection of individual rights and liberties during periods of emergency and exercise of extraordinary executive powers. Signed by Marcos a few days before martial law. Now let me read to you section number 2. And I hope Danny Lamila hears this very well. Section 2 says, and I quote, whenever in the judgment of the President, Prime Minister, yan po si Marcos yan, President at Prime Minister, there exists a great danger or a threat or imminence thereof, he, Mr. Marcos, may issue such orders as he may deem necessary to meet the emergency, including but not limited to preventive detention. Ano pong ibig sabihin itong preventive detention? The meaning of preventive detention is, if Mr. Marcos thinks that next month you will commit a crime, he can now order you arrested so you will not be able to commit your crime. Anong klaseng batas yan? Iniisip mo pa lang, nabilanggo ka na eh. Abay, hayop pa ako itong batas na ito. Eh kung totoo ito, lahat ng lalaki diborsyada na, nag-iisip pa lang magliligaw, patay na sa asawa. Imagine, my friends, if in the mind of Mr. Marcos, he suspects that next week you may commit a crime, the police can arrest you in the Philippines today. Let me proceed. If in the mind of Mr. Marcos, you pose a grave threat to national security, he may restrain or restrict your movement and other activities of persons or entities with a view to preventing them from acting in a manner prejudicial to the national interest or security or maintenance of public order. He may direct the closure of any publication or other media of mass communication he may believe to be subversive, banning or regulating the holding of entertainment or exhibitions detrimental to the national interest, control admission to educational institutions whose operations are found prejudicial to the national security. If there are many students who want to demonstrate, and that in his mind is prejudicial to national security, he may close the school or prevent those students from enrolling in those schools. And my friends, any violation of this law entails an imprisonment for not less than 30 days and not exceeding 1 year. So you have Mr. Marcos lifting martial law on one hand and putting another law in the other, which is even worse than the former martial law. This therefore summarizes me to our point. Ano baga ang ating away? What is the cause for all of this struggle? Very succinctly, I believe that no man, how brilliant this man, can dictate the welfare or the direction of 48 million Filipinos. What happened to us? I think we should review what happened to us. In 1972, Mr. Marcos declared martial law. Why did he declare martial law? If you read his pronouncement, he said there was anarchy in the street, there was a left and right rebellion, there was this and there was that. But there is only one reason, which he never said. He wanted to prolong his stay in Malacanang sapagkat napakasarap.